Right, welcome to another video. This time we're going to follow Aragorn and his journey to Isengard with Theoden King. There's Theoden King up there standing in front of the doors. I could go in there and have a look, but we're not going to. We're in the Hornburg and we are going to head for Isengard, which is the next step of the journey. I can't remember where we are now. I think it's Aragorn's third installment. But in this video, what I want to do is I want to talk about Aragorn himself. How powerful was Aragorn? It's an interesting question because it's not obvious. So we're going to run down and we'll get ourselves going and we'll talk about that question and we'll see if we can answer it using the evidence from the Lord of the Rings novel itself. What we're going to try and do is get down these stairs. There's stairs here. There we go. And we'll try and get ourselves out and we'll go in the right direction with any luck. Oh, we can go down. Where can we go down? Let's see. We just have to get out of here. We'll get ourselves on the road to Isengard and then we will have a talk about that. As I said, it's not that obvious from the book because in the novel, Aragorn does not, in fact, display any great obvious power, and yet he becomes... Is this the right way? No, we're inside the Hornburg. We need to go outside the Hornburg. Let's go the other way. There's the big gate over there. Let's go that way. It's so obvious, really, when you see it. How do you get lost? This place is very circular and losable and easy to get lost in. Whatever the good word for that is. Anyway, we can mount up and we can get our horse and we can head for Isengard. Isengard's over behind those mountains over there. So let's get ourselves a horse. I haven't got a shortcut key for this one, so probably there's one way of doing it, but I just can't. Okay, so we're heading for Isengard, and after the Battle of Helm's Deep, of course, this whole valley was filled with trees. Well, beyond the gate was filled with trees where the orcs were all taken in by the Huorns of Fangorn. We saw a few Huorns earlier. Anyway, remember this video is going to contain spoilers for Lord of the Rings and for the movies and for any other version of Lord of the Rings. So go and read the book first. There's a link in the description below. So Aragorn, yes, what about Aragorn, right? In the book, very honourable, very much the king designate of, eventually we discover, the first time you read the novel. You don't realise that until you get it well through the book, that he's going to be the crowned king. But it's not obvious that he's got any particular power, and yet he is extraordinarily powerful. And I'm going to give you the evidence from the book, and maybe a little bit of evidence from other of Tolkien's writings. I even wrote a list this time so that I could remain organised. So the first real hint, I guess, we get of Aragorn's power is his dealings with the Nazgul. He knows when he meets the hobbits in Bree, he knows that they're being hunted by the Nazgul. They tell him, essentially, the Black Riders, and they escape from Bree with a little bit of subterfuge and misleading the people who might inform. But he's not scared to do this journey. In fact, he believes that the best option is to escape Bree and head straight for Rivendell, and he goes by the back ways where he can hide. And so his attitude is one of dealing with the situation rather than being afraid of it as such. And so that's a hint of his confidence, a hint of his confidence in his own power, but it doesn't really say very much, does it? So the next hint we get from the book is at the Council of Elrond, where Gandalf's telling his story, and he's telling the story of how he was captured by Saruman and missed Frodo in the Shire, and because of that, he was really concerned that the Black Riders were going to catch Frodo, and he eventually gets to Bree, and he talks to Butterbur, and Butterbur says, well, they went off into the wilds with that Strider fella, and Gandalf goes, with huge relief, it's the first time he can sleep since he escaped from Saruman, the first time he could have a night of rest. And what does that suggest? Well, that suggests that Gandalf had every confidence in Aragorn's ability to deal with the ring wraiths, even though possibly all 9 of them were in the field against him. So there you go. Here we are at the Fords of Isen, by the way. So all 9 in the field against him, and Gandalf was confident that Aragorn was powerful enough to deal with the problem. Now, you might think reading the novel that it was just because Aragorn would have been good at hiding from them, but I don't think so. The second thing that we get a hint from there is, we need to talk about the power of the ring wraiths, I suppose. And we get that fairly soon afterwards, actually. This is where the Battle of the Fords of the Isen happened. The power of the ring wraiths, well, let's think about that then, because the power of the ring wraiths is clear when we meet Glorfindel. So Glorfindel's been sent out from Rivendell to hunt for the hobbits in the wild, and Rivendell has only sent out a few people who are powerful enough to compete with the ring wraiths, to stand against them, as Glorfindel says. There are very few. Glorfindel himself is an incredibly powerful character in Middle Earth. He, I think he was the herald of the elves at the battle of in the fall of Gondolin. And he's also a member of the White Council. That's dropped in, actually, in the book, but we don't hear of him really in the movies at all. Here we are riding up towards Isengard. We're going too fast for this story. Anyway, so Glorfindel is an incredibly powerful character, and one of the few in Rivendell who's powerful enough to withstand the 9. And Aragorn can be counted amongst that company. So there's food for thought about how powerful Aragorn is. So, what else? So, the Fellowship set off. Well, we had Weathertop as well, of course. And I know in the movie we see Aragorn chasing off the 9 ring wraiths. Who's this lot? Don't know. Anyway, we see Aragorn chasing off the ring wraiths in the movie. That doesn't actually happen in the book, so we don't see his power there. I think that maybe Peter Jackson wanted to show a little bit of Aragorn's power in the movie, and so we see more of it probably in the movie than we do in the book, in the novel. And then, of course, we have the Fellowship moving south, and Boromir is almost immediately affected by the ring's power, and Aragorn is apparently unaffected and isn't tempted by the ring apparently at all. And yet Boromir falls, who's also a man, so we know that men are weak and easily swayed by the rings, and yet the ring seems to have no effect on Aragorn. Boromir falls after the Fellowship leave. There's another one actually in Moria, where we probably see the limits of Aragorn's power. I mean, he wasn't as powerful as Gandalf, and we hear that when Gandalf faces the Balrog, and he clearly says, this is a foe beyond any of you. So only Gandalf's going to stand up to another Maiar, which is what Gandalf is and what the Balrog was. And here we are in Isengard. And so, I was wondering if there's any Ents about this place. Let's see. The last time we were here, there were no Ents, I think. So, oh, hang on, we've got an old troop of people now. We've got some of the people we've just been talking about. Here he is, in fact. This is going to be Aragorn. I'm guessing. And Gandalf. And Theoden. We'll have a look at that in just a second. So here we are at Isengard. Last time we were here with my Hobbit character, we didn't see these guys. So the Battle of Isengard's over. We're here to have a chat with Saruman. He's going to pop up here in a minute. Anyway, so yes, at in Moria, Gandalf clearly states Aragorn is no match for the Balrog, which is fair enough, because nobody would be. Even Glorfindel would have dreaded to face a Balrog. So then we get to... I'm going to dismount here, I think. Then we're ready to come to... So Boromir falls, and of course Aragorn is basically the leader of the Fellowship, all the way from Moria to the breaking of the Fellowship. And he doesn't at any point try to take the ring from Frodo. And that clearly means that he's conquered any desire he has for the ring. And he does have desire, because just as just before the three runners set off, the three hunters set off to try and follow the two hobbits, Aragorn does comment to himself that the temptation of the ring is now behind him. I mean, he would have been tempted perhaps to use the ring to save Gondor, but he's actually pleased that temptation is no longer in front of him. When Frodo runs off with the ring and Sam, Aragorn is released from any temptation at all. And then, of course, he heads off to Rohan. We get the Battle of Helm's Deep, where he shows his leadership, and we get the next thing that we discover how powerful Aragorn is, and that power comes through in a couple of instances. So, for example, when he uses the Palantir to draw Sauron's eye away from his own land, is what he said. But think about that for a minute. He was able to wrest control of the Palantir of Isengard away from Sauron, and he was able to use his own free will to direct his gaze elsewhere. Now, neither Denethor nor Saruman were able to completely escape the clutches of Sauron, and yet Aragorn was. Now, does this suggest that Aragorn was as powerful as Saruman? Seems unlikely, and yet perhaps he was more clever or more noble, and nobility is a trait that Tolkien gives great credit to. So the nobility perhaps is what makes it difficult for Sauron to conquer Aragorn with the Palantir. But just think, Aragorn was able to use the Palantir for his own purpose, and yet Saruman and Denethor were not. Of course, Denethor is of the line of Numenor, but his blood has been watered down, although Gandalf says that the blood of Numenor ran nearly true in Denethor and in Faramir. And Faramir is another interesting character we should talk about at another time, because in the movies he's very depowered, if you like. But anyway, let's keep going with Aragorn. So Palantir, he's at least as powerful he's certainly more powerful than Denethor, and is maybe wiser than Saruman. Don't know. So it's a tricky one, that, because Saruman was captured by the Palantir, and yet Aragorn wasn't. So there's something interesting there. And then, of course, there's the Paths of the Dead. Well, you could say that this is just an oath that needed honouring to the right person. Maybe that's just a fairly straightforward piece of plot, if you like. But there you go. And then, of course, when he gets to Gondor, there's the various leaderships. So he becomes the leader of Gondor by right and by his own charisma and maybe his own power, brings people to follow him. So in the end, we find that Aragorn, although he doesn't actually reveal a great deal of power directly in the story, is clearly an incredibly powerful character. He's at least as powerful as Glorfindel, which probably puts him on the same level as Galadriel and Elrond, although they're ring bearers, of course. Not as powerful as Gandalf, clearly, or at least couldn't fight a Balrog when Gandalf could. And yet was able to use the Palantir, possibly because the Palantir is an artifact of Numenor and was given to the Numenorians, and maybe he knew a few tricks or had a few racial tricks that Saruman didn't have available to him, and yet he was able to use the Palantir to defy Sauron. Now, the other thing, from other stories, we find that Sauron is greatly feared the Númenóreans. When Sauron was taking over Middle-earth before the fall of Númenor, Sauron was incredibly afraid of the Númenóreans and did everything he could to thwart their purpose. But he had no fear at all of the ordinary human beings that lived in Middle-earth, and it completely dominated them. So there's definitely something different about the Númenóreans in Tolkien's writings. It's clear that the Númenóreans were given considerable powers. They were given long life, but they were also given great knowledge and wisdom, and probably power by the Valar, who were thanking them for supporting them in the war against Morgoth. But anyway, there you go. I didn't put any rolly R's in there at all when I was talking all those names. But in the end, Aragorn being 95% Númenórean was a figure of great power. And even though he just looks like an ordinary man, looks like Boromir, what we find, if we read between the lines and we look at all the things that he does and the things that people say about him, and particularly Gandalf, it's absolutely clear that Aragorn is a character of considerable power. Let's see if this is Aragorn, is it? Halbarad? Aragorn, there he is, all dressed up in his I'll go and say hello. Here's Aragorn. So we might get another picture of that. So anyway, there you go. That's the end of my story. Aragorn, incredibly powerful character, right up there with Galadriel and Elrond in power in Middle-earth, and Glorfindel. So way, way, way more powerful than Boromir, even though the two of them were men, and more powerful probably than Gimli and Legolas. We're not mentioning the fact that he managed to keep up with those two on a run across Middle-earth. They were just running, and all three of them kept up with each other. And Gimli was the first to show that he was tired from that run in the book as well as in the movie. I mean, the movie was played a bit for laughs, but not in the book. But there you go. So there you go. Aragorn, incredibly powerful character, much more powerful than you would think from reading the book, or at least at first glance. Without reading between the lines, you just think he doesn't really do very much. He just kind of saunters in, raises an army of the dead, and becomes king of Gondor. But in fact, not only does he do that, he's got an incredible amount of power. So there you go. Very, very powerful character in Middle-earth. That's the end of my story. What do you think? Leave a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to hear more. And thanks to everyone who I know there's a few people who follow these stories, these little journeys of mine. And thanks to all of you for coming along this far. I hope you're still with me. And it's coming up to Christmas. I don't know if I'll do another video before the end of the holidays. But if I do, it'll not be until after Christmas, I'm pretty sure. So I hope everybody has a very safe and peaceful holiday. And I'll see you in the next video. Good night.